Hi, this is Caleb with A Safe Landing Counseling Services. I bring a Christian perspective to the counseling setting, and there are many counselors out there that do this. They may do it in different formats, but we bring a Christian perspective and it can be very helpful. So if you're looking for counseling that's beyond just the psychological and into the spiritual realm, as well as the psychological, look for somebody who's spiritually based with biblical principles that can help you walk through that path together. So a little bit about what I want to talk about today is spiritual warfare. I've mentioned some of this concept previously on other videos, but I haven't said spiritual warfare necessarily. I just said, oftentimes the thoughts that come into our mind aren't our own, and we need to take every thought captive. We really need to be aware of those thoughts. So spiritual warfare goes a little bit beyond thought process, but oftentimes thought process is where the battlefield is. So we want to be mindful of what to do in this battle, how to tear down strongholds, how to make sure that we're secured with our thought process. So spiritual warfare is really a term that is in the understanding. Jesus says there is an enemy who comes to steal, kill, and destroy. All right. So when I understand that I'm in the middle of a battle, life changes a little bit. It's not all unicorn, roses, rainbows, all those things. There's a lot of thorn bushes on those roses. There's storms with the rainbows. I've never seen a unicorn, so I don't know. So in regard to spiritual warfare, we want to make sure that we're aware of what's around us and how our thoughts are playing into our day-to-day life, our belief system about who we are. Now, there's a kind of a terminology around warfare. The greatest kind of warfare is with deception. There's actually a video game out there that actually starts off with a statement similar to that. But deception's one of the largest parts of spiritual warfare. If I can get you to believe something that's not true, but it lines up with my propaganda, then in that term, I can win a battle pretty quickly. I mean, if we look at Hitler and Nazi Germany, there's other content, even in the United States, but primarily we can go back to Nazi Germany, and it was all for good things that Hitler was doing certain tasks and having certain structures put in place just for the safety of people, and people were in crisis mode, kind of like today. So being aware that there is a crisis out there, and then being able to supply a need for that crisis, or giving a relief for that crisis by putting in structure that will never go away. And that's really what Nazi Germany was about. Well, we have a similar circumstance within our mindsets. We can have a lot of chaos, a lot of just thoughts that are going awry, and we need to be aware of those thoughts because the enemy will take a hold of them and give a solution that takes away control. Now, how does he do this? Well, typically it's through what we call agreements. So John Eldridge is a great author for spiritual content around some of these topics. So he would say that there are agreements that we make with Satan. Well, I kind of expanded upon some of these topics in my own thought process. If you're going, you will agree to something. Jesus kind of says this in the gospel. You can serve only one master. You can't love and serve two masters at the same time. You'll either agree with one and hate the other. Well, the reality is you're going to agree to one thing that's outside of yourself, one stream of thought, stream of belief outside of yourself. So that stream then becomes an access point. And in that access point, then we get closer to the mindset. So if I believe I'm a failure, I truly am a failure. Look at all these things in my life that indicate that I'm a failure. I've done this, I've done that, and that didn't work out. This hasn't worked out. I'm not getting the job. My marriage is failing because my wife's not happy. My children are going astray, and so I'm a failure. As soon as I say I am, I'm creating a new personhood over myself, one that's not from the kingdom of heaven, one that's not from God. It is actually saying I am, meaning my being, who I am is changing, my identity is changing. So when that happens, we have played into a deceit, which is part of that warfare. If I'm aware of what deceitful things can come up, then I can overcome them. And I know who's overcome the world, so I'm going to partner with what he says. I go back to Scripture to help me do this. What does Scripture say about me? Well, even still, people struggle with getting their identity from Scripture because it seems like it can be a blanket statement over everyone. Well, that could be true, but there's a basis there for all humanity. I am made in the image of God. Great, awesome. If I'm made in the image of God, that means I'm in his likeness. So we go back to Genesis 1. And if I know I'm in his likeness, then what does that mean about me being a failure? If I'm a failure, does that mean he's a failure? I don't think God's a failure. But I've taken that identity on. So I have to reconcile what it means to be a failure. So really the first part of spiritual warfare is being aware of the lies that come into your thought process, into your mind, and that you can, even if the circumstances are really bad out there, that you can say, that doesn't change who I am. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would be a good example of that. They say, even if you throw us into the fire, we still will not bow down to the statue. And we know that our God can save us, but if he doesn't, we're not going to bow down. So they are thrown in. God didn't save them from being thrown in. However, he stepped in the fire with them, and they weren't burned. They didn't even get singed. They didn't even smell like smoke. So being aware of the agreement. What am I agreeing to? Is God greater? Is my identity in him accurate? Is he really calling me as a person that looks like him? Knowing my authority would be the next step of warfare. As soon as I know those lies, then I can renounce them. I rebuke that lie. I am not under that thought process. That's really what renouncing is I've believed this. I'm not going to believe it any longer. I'm going to believe the truth. Now, God, what do you say is the truth over me? So we have Scripture that's helpful. We're going to go to Scripture. That's a great place to get what God says about us. But we also have to hear his voice. And what I mean by that is perceive what he thinks about us. It's beyond the actual ears, but you can feel it in your heart. You can have thoughts that come in. You can have images that can come in. You can feel in your body physiologically. Those different elements help you perceive what God says about you. So when you declare that, it gives you authority. Now, the last level of warfare that I'd like to talk about is in Revelation 19:11. It says that they overcame the evil one by the blood of the Lamb and by the words of their testimony. The more that I realize that God has showed up for me, he's shown up over time, and I recount that over and over and over, I reestablish that he is God, he is my Father, and he cares for me, and that overcomes the lies that the enemy puts out there against you. So I hope this gives you a very basic understanding of spiritual warfare, and we can expand upon it as we go, but that will be for another time. Have a wonderful day.